like to talk about the King's promise to the people, which is the coronation oath, because it's what binds everything in our constitution, which is what makes it circular. Now, the king is supposed to be chosen or appointed by the people because the people deem that person to be knowledgeable, courageous, respectable, and basically a wise elder. And so then the crown essentially then is a gift to the king as a representation or symbolic of the people's sovereignty. So then the king swears an oath to the people to govern according to their laws and customs. Now that's the critical point in the oath. Now that must be clearly defined because, as which I will explain now, the laws and customs is specifically referencing legem terrae, the common law of the land. And where is that referenced in our constitution? Article 39 of our authentic 1215 constitution, which basically says, and I'm paraphrasing, that no one can move against an individual without judicium parium suorum, judgment of our peers, or, if you prefer, or in other words, legem terrae, the law of the land. So that's what the king swears to uphold in his oath. So then essentially the coronation oath is a part of common law itself. It has nothing to do with government or statute. But then the government, or HM government, His Majesty's government, or more correctly, His Majesty's administration, because that's what they are. They're the administrators of the king on behalf of the people. So now the silly fun and games that have gone on since the Treasonous Bill of Rights included turning the coronation oath into a statute, which changed the words governing according to laws and customs. Essentially they inserted the words, paraphrasing, but governing according to statutes agreed on. So what they've done there is completely interfered with the ancient customary practice of natural justice by trying to usurp the framework by which the king is personally responsible for upholding the laws and customs of the land as prescribed in the Articles of Common Law in Magna Carta, which of course they cannot do, because by inserting that into the coronation oath through a statute, which they cannot do, and what they did with the Bill of Rights is to place themselves, essentially make themselves sovereign by placing themselves above the people. So therefore creating a master-slave relationship, which is what the Constitution prevents. The Constitution is there purposefully to always place the people at the top, so that the people always have the final say with regards to matters of law and justice through the voice of the country, which is trial by jury. The voice of the citizenry through the consciences of 12 jurors that represent the overall community. So what the Bill of Rights did is remove that completely and then overlay a majority vote on top of that, so that conscience and deliberation and nuance was removed from the equation, and then installed majority vote. So influencing people to think a certain way and then voting on it and then backing it by law and then claiming legitimacy because a certain amount of people, called a majority, have agreed with it. But as I just said, that removes all conscience and nuance and any issues of morality that clearly need to be acknowledged when dealing with matters of law and justice. So the people appoint a king. The king swears an oath to the people to be personally responsible for upholding our laws and customs. And then the MPs in Parliament, the police and all other public servants swear an oath to the king. So essentially, they are also making a promise to the people. Because if they're swearing an oath to the king, who in turn made an oath to the people, it's the people who are sovereign at the top. And the king is the sovereign because he represents us as first among equals, our most senior public servant, but he cedes sovereignty to the people through the coronation oath to protect and uphold our way of life, in other words, our law and customs. So the primary role of all public servants, the king and the government, through their oaths, is to uphold the constitutional rule of law. And this is what this country needs to get its head around. The mechanism is there, it has always been there. We just need to understand our constitution and how it places the people as the final arbiter of law, and these public servants have sworn to uphold it through their oaths, as I have explained. So it's a circular system of sovereignty and protection of the people, and it's a very simple framework once you understand it. But essentially all power lies with the people, and the Constitution binds the public servants by creating a system of equity by which all people are constitutionally recognised as being equal under the law. That's the only way it can be in the natural order, because otherwise you're creating the imbalance which is otherwise known as tyranny. You know, the current master-slave relationship that we are in, where still, unfortunately, a huge amount of people have a diseased psyche, where they believe that a small group of people, which call themselves government, have the moral right to use a monopoly of coercion and violence through policy against the people they are supposed to represent. So all these little nuances and details that the Constitution has, covered since time immemorial, even before Magna Carta we had the law of the land. Magna Carta simply reaffirmed the law of the land and our laws and customs because of King John's reign of terror. So we need to learn from that lesson. Why did Magna Carta come about? Because of absolute tyranny, and we are in similar tyrannous times. And if we're going to pull ourselves out of this, we need to understand how we're all interconnected through the quality of our behaviour to each other, and we're all bound to each other through community, because we interact with each other through community. So there has to be a framework of equity that we all realise, by which we can all function equitably and lawfully within the boundaries of natural law. We're supposed to act responsibly and sort everything out between each other, but then if there is a dispute or a crime, that's why we have a natural justice system, which they're trying to completely eradicate through the Leveson review on trial by jury, which they can't do legitimately, obviously, because timeless principles of natural justice cannot be argued with. They just cannot. Of course, tyrants will try to remove that and interfere with it, but that's why I can only plead with people at this point to please understand our Constitution, because that's what really interconnects everyone through a system of equity. I mean, fairness, all being equal under the law, all of us, no exception. So the spiritual science of natural law is embodied in the secular framework of our Constitution, meaning our trial by jury, the means by which the people govern themselves in accordance with natural law, creating a natural order of things where the people are governing themselves, being conscientious and morally responsible for ourselves and each other. This is how the universe wants us to operate. So essentially, the Constitution is the embodiment of what Passio talks about when he mentions the law of one, which is where we need to create the conditions by which none of us can suffer. So if we allow for the conditions for just one of us to suffer through acts of immorality and injustice, consequentially those conditions will get worse, which will allow for the suffering of all of us, and that's where we're at now. So it's up to us to address causal factors, being ignorance of objective morality and ignorance of equity and our Constitution, reverse that through education and knowledge, and teaching others that we're co-creating the conditions that are manifesting as our physical reality. And I really need to make a point, but if you do nothing about this, you're actually helping to co-create those conditions through apathy and ignorance and cowardice. So put the work in, put the effort in. It's very empowering, because you realise that the sovereign voice of the people has all the power, as it should do. So yeah, enjoy your weekend. Bye for now.